Hi, Jake. Thanks for joining Hey You Guys to talk about your new movie, which is an indie movie and it's based on a true story. It's a really emotive, heartwarming tale, and I watched it last night. And I have to say, it had me welling up at points and then laughing out loud at other points. So well done to you and the cast, because you've done a really good job. The
Thanks,
first
man. Thank you.
question,
Yeah.
thanks. My first question was, um, obviously this is an independent movie. So what made you want to actually be a part of this project?
My manager had read the script and she sent it along to me and was like, "Hey, this is a small movie, but I really think it's a lovely story and you should take a look." And so I read it and I felt the same way. I was like, "Oh, this could be really great." And then I spoke with Nico, who co-wrote the script with his wife and producing partner Emily, and is the director. And I the two concerns I had were that the film could go a couple of different ways, depending on what their perspective on the story was. And I was worried that that it could lean toward like a white savior narrative, and really didn't have any interest in making a film that kind of went down that path.
Yeah.
And then speaking to Nico, he was like, definitely not. Absolutely want to stay away from that. Not what this story is. The story is really asking, like, when do these three people become a family, and isn't a story of two white people from the West traveling to India and scooping a girl out of poverty and whisking her back to America. That it really, they recognize that Savary has her own life. She has this fulfilling um, life with friends and education and art and joy and food and housing and the love of these sisters. And, it's like we're really taking her out of something that's fulfilling and meaningful to her
Mm.
with the knowledge that she will age out of this. And then there's no answer as to what happens then. And so it does cost something to potentially give her this opportunity for later in life,
Sure.
and that it requires all three people, Savary, Andrew, and Daniela, to find one another and to overcome these cultural and language barriers to just crack the door open to the possibility of becoming like a family unit. So that was one element, and the other was that I was worried that Andrew on the page could read as a little disengaged, as if he were just sort of like a dopey husband who's along for the ride, and this is something his wife wants, and he's willing to support that, but isn't particularly um, proactive or caring. And Nico was quick to be like, "That's not the case. He's not rising to the occasion particularly well, but he really wants to. Like
Mm.
he's as emotionally engaged in this adoption going through, in being in India, in meeting Savary, in making it work. He just isn't. He doesn't have the tools.
Yeah.
And so we started saying that Andrew was like leading from behind. That he's like, "I'm here for it. I'm ready to rock. Just tell me what to do and where to go and how to do it, and I'm your guy." Like
Yeah.
he doesn't totally have the tools or the ability maybe to step into what's being asked of him until the third act of the film. So that's a long answer, but that's really what, I don't know, a trust in the story and a trust in Nico is really what
Mhm.
propelled me to do it.
Okay. And as mentioned earlier, it's based on a true story. Did knowing it was based on a real family change how you approached the role of Andrew?
It honestly just made me trust that the story, that we could really lean into what the story is without fearing that it was like that there was an agenda or that there was some kind of like narrative construct driving the beats of this story, and then it starts to lean into tropes or cliches or something. It felt
Mm.
like because this was what occurred and we've not embellished anything, um, that you really could commit to what the story is,
Yeah.
and not be wary of like, are we sure we don't want to have it go this way instead of that way? I'm worried it reads this way. You could just let that go and be like, this is what happened. So
Mm.
that's what we're gonna tell.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
and Andrea, who, this the family who this story, they're Italian. They adopted their daughter from India. Then Andrea wrote this graphic novel of their experience of going through the adoption process, and Savary, moving to Italy with them and what that was like. And but given that he is also an artist, and he and Nico had this bond and connection, it felt like their goal or their hope was that there would be this like emotional truth to the story, and that was the guiding principle. So none of the circumstances or events are embellished or made up, but no one was like, these are the glasses that Andrea wears. You need to wear those glasses. This is the haircut that he had. You need to have that haircut. It's not, nobody was caught up in sort of matching mannerisms or things like that as much as like matching intent and the texture of these relationships, and you know how Andrea, and Daniela interacted, and what their sort of dynamic was surrounding um, the hurdles that they came up against.
Mm.
Once they arrived in India.
That's really interesting. And did you actually get a chance to meet the family in person?
Yeah, we
It's based on
spoke
it.
first over Zoom, with Nico translating. Nico speaks English and Italian, and they're Italian. I do not speak Italian. And so that was wonderful, somewhat getting, specific answers to questions, and somewhat just to see their dynamic and the really like strong, I don't know, fierce is too much, maybe has too much edge to it, but like just their love for one another, you
Mm.
know? And then when the film was at the Santa Barbara Film Festival, Savary, Daniela, and Andrea had flown over,
Oh,
and
wow.
so we got to finally all meet in person, which was so wonderful. And yeah, they're lovely. I mean, it just is. Yeah, they're lovely.
That's amazing. I think I read somewhere that the entire movie was shot in India, specifically Goa. And I'm not
Yeah.
sure if you had been to India prior to this movie being shot, but my grandparents are from India.
Mm.
And I could really relate to those early scenes at the airport where the bags were being touched, by the driver. And then you got in the van and you were driving, and then cows were like just wandering out onto the road. So it's organized chaos and it's a bit of a
Yes.
culture shock. But India really gets under your skin after a few days of being there, and you just end up falling in love with the place. What was your experience like of that?
Yeah. Same. I'd never been, and was very excited to go, and was overwhelmed, to be sure. Like sights, sounds, smells, animals, like the speed of things occurring, and you know, uh, it was astounding. Yeah, I've never experienced anything like it. I had nothing to compare it to. Um, so many places I've traveled, there's some kind of overlap to my other travels or experiences at home or whatever, to
Yeah.
go, it's like this, but it's that. And it's, this was completely separate. And man, I fell in love with it. Like we were there for a month. At the end of the month, I was ready to like go home. I felt like I needed like a reset to get my brain to sort of slow down again in a way. But man, I loved it. And really like, there was the crew was like a handful of American crew, director, Naz and myself, the DP, two producers. The rest of the crew, grips, electric, hair, makeup, everything, costume design, was all an Indian crew.
Mm.
And um and man, like I really like fell in love with like that crew. Like just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful group of people, and so incredibly talented. And you know, Bollywood is churning out hundreds of movies. So like, just they were working at the highest level.
Mm,
Just it was awesome. It was fantastic.
that's great. So the food in Goa is amazing.
Yeah.
Lots of fresh seafood. However, the spice levels are insane. So, what is your spice intolerance? Could you cope with it, or did you chicken out and ask them to make some really bland food for you at the restaurants?
the last the last couple nights we were filming out in this market. It's overnight filming, and some of the young women who are like working were like, we're gonna get a bite of food, do you want something? I was like, yeah, but like, don't worry about me, like whatever you want to get, I'll be fine. And they were like, yeah, no. And I was like, I've been here a month, like it's fine, I can definitely handle the heat. And and they were like, they were so nice and trying to be protective of me, but also like did not need to be polite about it. And they were like, you cannot handle this. You will have this heat and you will be sick for a day. If we screw up filming because you got sick because we gave you food that was too spicy, that looks crazy. Like,
Yeah, it's
we'll take
lethal.
care of it. I was like, fine. And so they got some chicken and different things, um and I was eating it and I was like, this got some kick to it. Like this I'm hanging, and I was like, what is this on a scale for you? What, 1 to 10? And one of the girls was like, I would not eat that. That's like cardboard. That has almost no flavor to it. Like, man, I really thought I was I thought I was cruising.
Oh, that's
You know what is
hilarious.
nuts though, dude? On the other end of the spectrum, I was filming in Melbourne and I would just try to buy these, like, you have like Mission Taco, you know what I mean? Ortega or
Uh-huh.
whatever, like these quick packs that you can just like dump in with some ground beef. In the States, there's like mild, medium, maybe there's spicy, but there's nothing very spicy about it. Australia, in these markets, all I could find was like cool. It's like one step below mild. I was like, this is crazy. Like, what are we doing over here? I was having to like buy cayenne pepper to like get something going. But I would like go
Spice
to
it up.
different markets and be like,
Yeah.
you guys are selling cool, like what, like not Cool Ranch, like genuinely, like just calm it down. Just take it all the way down. Anyway, yeah,
That's
the food
funny.
there is fantastic.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's great. But moving away from the food, I believe this was Nicola Rinciari's directional debut.
Yeah.
He did so well in capturing something that's really difficult to describe unless you've actually experienced it and been to India yourself.
Mm.
What was that like working with him and learning those kind of things from him?
Man, it's so exciting to see, he and Emily, his wife, and who co-wrote the script and producing partner, and they both are like, it's so exciting to see people young and intelligent and capable and driven and like and getting a shot at it. Like there's a lot of people who have those first attributes who don't get a shot. And it was just such a pleasure to work with him. His vision and intelligence, and also like his fortitude, his ability to
Mm.
like, it's hard to make a small movie with a small budget internationally. Like that's a lot to take on. And
Sure.
he and our DP Kai were so well prepared and so thoughtful in their approach, both in having a plan, having certain shots that they knew they needed and wanted, and also a real ability to pivot at any moment. There's so many. There's this wonderful thing I remember where we're shooting a scene where we're leaving this orphanage essentially. Salary does not understand what's occurring, has had no preparation to be like, you're going to go live with these people now, and they're going to take you to another continent. And she tries to climb out of the van as we're driving.
Yeah, I
And,
was just, yeah, that scene, honestly.
you know, and it looks compact. It's compact. Like it's tight. Like it's tight and hot. And there's, and Kai is laying down like in the back with a camera like this to, try to figure out how to get coverage of everybody. And we're on this loop. So we're going back and forth to be able to get as many takes as we can. And we want to get the sun at a certain point. But then also coming back, we're just on this dirt road. Coming back, you could see like the sun like setting under these trees and like the cows. And I was like, dude, can you like swing and get that? And like no question, bang, like windows down, we're coming back, and Kai's like grabbing essentially B-roll to be able to edit in.
Mhm.
It's like that kind of on the fly um ingenuity, not on my part, but on his, to like dial that in and grab it. Like all these little things. Um, the scene in the alley, we needed this kind of higher angle on it. We don't have a ladder and a crane and whatever. And so Kai again like scurries across this little ravine in the city up onto a building that I don't know that it's structurally sound. I don't think anyone's living in there, and there's like a concrete awning, and he like climbs his way up because he's a rock climber, climbs his way up, and then they hoist him the camera, and he's up there. This is 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's just like good to go. Like that kind of going rogue filmmaking is really fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
it was
it's
yeah.
the cinematography in this movie is amazing, and yeah, I can imagine you probably came away with so much amazing B-roll. One of the things that struck me was the film's warm human sensibility. Despite dealing with such an emotional subject, it never feels over the top. In
Mm,
fact, there's scenes that carry so much weight, and there's no dialogue. So there's that scene where Servaly is dancing. She's watching this TV program, and she starts dancing, and you just glance over at Daniela as if to say through that look, this is it. This is what we signed up for. We want to adopt this girl. But then at the same time, recognizing that you'd be taking her away from a land that she loves and all of that culture. Um, so yeah, it was just scenes like that where did those non-dialogue moments just happen organically, or did you discuss those with Nicola beforehand?
you know, Certainly it was scripted that she's dancing. Um, but I think that would just sort of be like we would talk through like she'll be dancing, and you just watch her dancing, and then look to Daniela, and then look back to her dancing. And there's some plotting out of that so that you know what shots you need to get. But the depth of those things or those feelings in the moment, for me at least,
Sure. Yeah. No,
really
again.
like arose from Ruhi, who plays Savari, and like
Hmm.
her performance. Like if you could take the first 30 seconds of any take to just really absorb her and what she's doing, it informs the entire rest of the scene as an actor, because she is so vibrant and alive and organic and such a spark, um and not performative, like.
Mm.
And so then it just grounds the scene. Like as soon as one person isn't performative as an actor, it sort of gives everybody permission to really like be with each other.
Yeah.
And she's a kid. A wonderfully talented kid who I don't think is performative at all. And so though that kind of like look or that recognition or whatever really probably came out of like witnessing her as a kid and just thinking about what that costs her, and the, and then looking to my wife and being like, this is amazing, and also like, what the fuck, you know
Yeah.
what are
Yeah.
we doing?
I mean, her performance is astonishing, especially for someone so young to carry all of that weight. I
Oh
think she's only 9 or 10, so she's
yeah,
brilliant.
she's incredible. Yeah, amazing.
I think both Andrew and Daniela were extremely naive to think that they could just pluck a child out of India and then take her back, and she's in love with her culture, and just
Right.
they didn't really prepare, they didn't really learn the language or anything. But I did feel sorry for them, and particularly Andrew, because he spends so much time desperately trying to do the right thing, and things just never seem to go right. Like for instance, the projectile tomato ketchup vomiting scene on the bed, you know, and he's trying to help. Do you think that he
uh,
could have done more to help Daniela?
well, I think in the very objective sense, yes, there is more he could have done. But in the just realistic, like everyone is doing their best. No, he's totally doing the very best that he can, and coming up short. Um, they'd been through this process for 7 years and had like one photo of Savary before arriving in India. And I think they really felt like the hardest part was behind them, that now like they've jumped through all these bureaucratic governmental hoops to get to this place where, yes, you can fly to India and meet this girl and build a life, the three of you. And and I think Andrew, there's a scene, in the film, but is shocked to find out that Sari has been told almost nothing
Mm,
in 7 years as to what is happening here, who we are to her and this whole situation, and what the future holds for her, and where she's going and what's happening. And, it's like she has almost no information regarding that. And I think, fair or not, that Andrew's expectation was that there was a little more happening on that end of things that would balance out what they'd been doing.
sure.
But yes, certainly learning the language would have would have helped, more than a sort of rudimentary understanding of things. Um, and also, I don't know. Well, what I should say is this story for the film's sake takes place now. You know, Savary now is 24.
Um,
So this story was happening 15 years ago when like the internet was a very real thing, but the ability to just go on and connect with people, to go, what was your experience like adopting a child from India, and somebody saying, hey, here's an entire Reddit thread of like, here's our experience, didn't exist.
yeah.
So he's as prepared as he could be, and still ultimately is lacking in moments,
Yeah. Yeah.
that he would admit that he's like, I wish I was making different choices right now. I don't know why this is what I'm doing.
One character I found really fascinating was Sister Aruna, played
Yeah.
by Mickey Singh. And she's a no-nonsense lady, and clearly isn't afraid to make difficult decisions. And we touched on the scene earlier, the scene where you're driving away from the orphanage in that van, and Servalee is crying, screaming. She's trying to open the door, get out the window. And Andrew and Daniela are pleading to Sister Aruna for help. And she just literally turns to the driver and says, drive faster. And at
Yeah.
first I thought, wow, she's harsh. But then as the movie progresses, you realize that her heart's in the right place, and she's doing all of these things because she wants everyone to be safe and happy. How do you feel her character was contributing to the story, and how important was her character to the story?
Well, her character is so instrumental. It's like she's the only link that Andrew and Daniela have to Savary for so long, and she's the only one who can kind of put them on some kind of a path toward um, all the three of them kind of uniting together as a family. And I think she really, you know, I guess you call it tough love a little bit, but she's just like, no one's coming to save you. You'll have to figure this out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not moving home with you, you know? You'll need to sort out what she needs. You'll need to sort out like emotionally or for food, or, it's like it's the same as leaving the hospital with a baby where you go like, and now you learn to do this. Now you're a parent and you got to figure it out. You like build the plane as you're flying. And she recognizes, Sister Aruna recognizes that that's really like the only way to really learn something is to
Yeah.
be, you know,
She just brings them down to
baptism by
reality.
fire. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Um,
and also that she does have a point to as I just was saying, like Andrew assumes there will have been more happening on the end of the orphanage in terms of telling Savary these people are coming, this is what's going to happen, preparing her for a year or whatever it is. I'm sure that Sister Aruna goes through this where like adoptions fall apart. People
sure.
don't get approved, they don't follow through, whatever. And so there's not a reason to actually take action
Hmm.
until the moment arrives because you never know.
Mm. Sadly, I think we're nearly running out of time, but I just quickly wanted to share this with you.
Yeah.
Do you recognize this at all?
Whoa.
So it's almost exactly the same color as the one that you had in the movie. Did you
Yeah.
keep it? And have you been grocery shopping to your local supermarket in that at all?
I did
It's a rite
not
of
keep it.
passage if you go to India.
Everything was was kept in India afterward. Is that yours?
That's my one. It's as I said, it's
Oh
like a
yeah.
rite of passage. If you go to India, you almost have to walk away with one of those.
It was
I've
such
never
a
worn it. The label's still on it, but
just around the house, just for a
yeah.
little remembrance. Yeah. Yeah, that's I mean, there's this whole scene where like Danielle is getting fitted for these things and Andrew's kind of poking fun. And then of course they're like, and now your turn. And he's like, sorry, what? But they had them custom measured and made for us. And it was wonderful. I mean, that was I get like part of that experience where like Andrew's experience and my experience are lining up directly to go like, how do I put this on and what's happening?
Yeah,
Um,
that's
yeah,
funny.
that was
And
great.
just really quickly, you've obviously been in many things. You've been in The Office, you've been in White Lotus, and some great movies as well. What's next for you?
I'm in a show called Furious that'll come out here in the States on Hulu. That's end of the summer. And then this lovely movie Magazine that I think will be at TIFF, and we'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, a handful of things kicking around. Um, yeah, just finished up this movie with Stephen Merchant and Cameron Diaz for Amazon that'll come out next year. That's really funny.
Great.
Yeah, that's what's next for me.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks, Jake. It was a pleasure talking to you,
Yeah,
and
same.
good luck
Thanks
with the
so
movie.
much.
You're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey you guys!
Hey, you guys!